Quake is one of those games where even if you've never played it, you've definitely heard about it, considering it's the grandfather of every multiplayer shooter you know of. Yet, despite how big multiplayer FPS games have become, and with how much technology has advanced since its inception, to this day, none quite do it like Quake did. It's making me think that there will never be another game like Quake. Now, Quake has fallen from grace in recent years as we've entered the modern era, but back in the day, Quake was one of, if not the most popular games on the PC when it first came out. Dominated the competition, having millions of dollars put into its esport, and honestly, it pretty much was the first esport. Yet, as time has passed, Quake is kinda dead. The two best ways to get the Quake experience, as far as I can tell, are either with Quake Champions or Quake Live, both on Steam. And both of these games have extremely dwindling player counts. Both games are unable to barely push past 500 concurrent players, which is a far cry from the current popular FPS games. It's sad to see this, as Quake is such an amazing, fun, skill-based experience. We are so used to building classes in these games, and most FPS games let you choose your playstyle one way or the other to pick the ideal tools for your gameplay, whether that's your preference or being a slave to the meta. This is obviously fine enough, but it runs into a lot of problems. The main one being that this style causes a heap of balancing issues in a lot of games. Obviously, a lot of these games require leveling up your profile in order to unlock certain guns, and so if you're a new player to these games stuck with rather poor weaponry, you are going to get steamrolled by a higher level player, not just because they may be better than you, but because their gun does 1,000,000 damage to you before you even do any to them. It creates a bad game experience, which does harm the competitive nature of a lot of these games, and that's why the Quake style of game has always been the most perfect formula for a competitive FPS game. In fact, the FPS games that avoid the aforementioned problems are games like Halo, that take heavy inspiration from Quake. As you spawn in, everyone in the game starts off with the same, rather weak basic weapon, but scattered through the map are weapons, armor, and health pickups. You travel around the map collecting all of these pickups to beef yourself up, making it so the better of a player you are, the longer you live for, the more the game rewards you by making you stronger in return. Though this does mean far less customization, this in turn makes the game completely fair to every player. Everyone in the game has the exact same chance to get the same gear as each other, with no BS leveling or unlocks to sway the tide in a player's favor. If you want to use a rocket launcher, you just need to go find it and pick it up. This can get slightly annoying, and RNG does for sure come into play with unlucky spawns, but this only adds another skill ceiling to the game besides aiming or movement: map knowledge. Memorizing the maps and their many pickups is what separates a good Quake player from a bad one. Sure, every game has game knowledge as a key skill, but in Quake, when this skill determines what weapons you have, what health and armor you have, and on top of trying to predict player habits, where players are, and many more factors, game knowledge is pushed to the extreme, almost higher than good aim. Sure, as a result of this, there is less weapon variety, but the Quake lineup of weapons have become so iconic at this point, and all of these are pretty well balanced that you can find a use case for basically every gun in the game. You can focus on one weapon if you want, but it generally is better to constantly be switching between these for when it's appropriate. Guns mainly dominate in certain situations, and so once again, this is a key skill to have. Rocket launchers, of course, are a personal favorite of mine, and probably what Quake is most well known for, considering how much this weapon design has made its way into other popular games. Predicting your enemy's movements as you perfectly time your rocket to land a direct hit is nothing short of orgasmic. In fact, a majority of the weapons in Quake are just incredibly satisfying to hit in general. Though some may be easier than others, they all do require a certain level of skill to use that makes this one of the most competitive multiplayer games for a reason. Aim, movement, game knowledge, predictions. So much comes into play, and considering just how competitive FPS games have become in recent years, it really does confuse me. Why isn't Quake more popular now? This is even more confusing when you consider that Quake is very well known for its fast-paced gameplay. Movement is a key part of the game and one of the most important skills to master. Rushing through hallways as you b-hop to increase your momentum, quickly reacting to enemies that appear on your screen at a moment's notice. Yet, movement shooters are something people are showing a growing interest in, and even in non-movement shooters, people are addicted to trying to abuse any movement mechanics they can, often to the point that it basically ruins the majority of these games for others. So clearly, people yearn for the fast-paced shooter such as Quake. So why is it dead? I think the simple reason that Quake isn't alive anymore, so to speak, is simply because there is a major lack of a modern adaptation. Quake Champions was the last game we've had in the franchise back in 2019. 2017. And to put it lightly, in my opinion, this was a bit disappointing of an entry. It's fine, and I'm not calling it bad at all. It's still very fun and offers the Quake fix many are after with modernized, quite impressive graphics. But this game is entirely bogged down with the disappointing addition of making the game another hero shooter. This was back when Overwatch was on the rise, and so every game wanted a piece of the pie, including Quake. The problem is, when Quake is so good because the balancing is perfect and every player is equal thanks to the map pickups I've mentioned earlier, the addition of a hero system where each character has their own unique ability and passive is where this design is completely overthrown. Abilities are a mixed bag because while some aren't major game changers, others can simply completely throw off the balance of a skirmish, making it so you lost a fight not because he was better, but because he had an ability that just completely shit on yours. And in my opinion, Quake Champions was also kind of harmed by slower movement mechanics, going from Quake Live, which I believe is the best Quake experience you can currently get, and going to Champions is night and day. You can really get some momentum going on Quake Live. Meanwhile, Quake Champions almost feels slower, heavier, and as a result, a bit more clunky. It's a bit harder to get movement started, and so it really does ruin a major aspect of the game. I can't speak for everyone, but I want to feel like I'm on crack when I'm playing a Quake game. Quake Champions missing the mark in these ways, and probably some others I'm not too clued up on, is the reason it didn't fully succeed, and as a result, means that Quake is now dead. And the fact it's dead means it's hard for new players to get into it. Not only can getting into a game take a lot of time, but it means a new player is joining a game where players have been playing for years, in some cases decades. There's no chance for new players to gradually get better at the game with players of their own skill level. It would be like a new Valorant player being thrown into a Radiant game off the bat. Your only way around this is playing with friends. But good luck convincing enough people to hop onto a dead game like this. They're not as based as you and I. They wouldn't understand. With no new adaptation to come out since 2017. Unfortunately, it's going to be stuck this way until they hopefully bring out a new entry. Because there's definitely interest there for a new Quake game. As said, people are craving fast-paced movement shooters involving a high level of skill. And in the single-player world, these boomer shooters are thriving, with games like Doom making a triumphant comeback, Ultra Kill becoming a cultural phenomenon, and many other lesser-known titles paving their way through the genre. So, seeing how much they're thriving via the single-player scene proves people want this type of game. And with Doom failing with its multiplayer each release, I'm sure people are craving an online experience in the genre. But even if any games were to arise like this other than Quake, I really don't think they'd be able to compete. Quake has just become so iconic in every area it excels in, and it is one of the kings of the genre. There will never be another Quake, not just because these types of games are a little past their prime, but because no other franchise can really compete with how well designed and iconic it's become. Anything made that comes close to it would really have to be some form of a copy, because I really don't see how you can improve on this design. The only way Quake will make a comeback now is with a brand new game. And with Doom continuing to get love, Quake 2 getting a remaster in recent years, and some teasers for a new game here and there, I believe it will happen soon. I hope so, at least, because I love Quake and I really want to play it with a thriving community. Hopefully id Software and Bethesda are cooking up a new entry for us so the game can thrive and new players can finally find out what I mean when I say there will never be another game like Quake.